Is your neurodivergence really a psychic gift in disguise? Today, I want to talk about the relationship between our mental health, neurodivergence, and psychic gifts, or ESP. So I want to share some of my own mental health journey with you and how I discovered that I was psychic, because I believe there's a lot of people who are sitting on psychic gifts and psychic senses, and they don't really recognize what is going on because they're told by medical professionals and the people around them who simply don't understand how a neurodivergent brain works or how psychic gifts work. I think a lot of us are brainwashed into believing there's something wrong with us. Plus the lingo used in a lot of mental health circles, like there's something wrong with you, your brain is different, you have to be on medication for the rest of your life, there's no cure for this, the only thing that can help you is talk therapy. And these aren't inherently bad things, but I have found other solutions to help me with my mental health diagnoses, yes, plural, throughout my lifetime. And I want to share my experience with the hope that it might help others who are struggling. Because if you're anything like me, you may have been in and out of doctor's offices for much of your life, struggling with things like generalized anxiety disorder, depression, ADHD, bipolar, borderline, and you might have tried some medication and some talk therapy, only to realize that years later, you really weren't feeling any better. Or maybe you would feel better for little periods of time and then go back and start feeling bad again and then keep blaming it on your mental health diagnosis, much like I did. But I feel very blessed to stumble upon a crystal in 2015, a crystal of all things. I was struggling a lot with anxiety and I was definitely drinking more than I should have. And in the years previous, I had seen therapists and I had gotten prescribed medication, Vyvanse for ADHD, and then the short-term Adderall. And in years prior to that, when I was 15, I was diagnosed with depression. And then they weren't sure if it was borderline or bipolar, but I was treated with Wellbutrin and Zoloft. And then I think that was it. So 15, 16, 17, I was on medication. Realized I was feeling numb because the medication and the therapy did not make me feel better. Plus, I was going through the natural growing pains of being a teenager, leaving home for the first time, dealing with my parents' divorce. So I started to self-medicate with alcohol and recreational drugs, like many teenagers and young adults are doing, especially since they are pushed on us. And not to mention that they were shown to us in the DARE program when we were kids too, which may have had an effect on our usage as an adult, but that's a whole different topic. So I don't want to get sidetracked today, but if you are interested in how that may have affected your experience with substances, go ahead and check out my DARE video on my channel. Anyways, I, like many other people who suffer from mental illness or a neurodivergent mind, was medicating with drinking and the use of recreational substances. And after being on, I think it was Wellbutrin for about a year, which I had switched onto from Zoloft when I was 15 or 16. And again, I'm sure things have changed a lot since then, but when I was 15, that first dose of Zoloft or whatever antidepressant I was on actually made my depression worse, and it made me want to unalive myself even more. And part of that could have been because I was a teenager and I didn't understand SSRIs. I didn't understand the importance of taking medication at the same time every day. So there may have been some issues with that. But I also had some deeply rooted issues and deeply rooted shame for the label that I was given by doctors, especially at a young age. I was already feeling different because I was a gifted kid, so I had been used to being taken out of class and going to the smart people classes and the accelerated classes and just being separated from my peers from the time I was in kindergarten, which I think definitely had a lasting effect on my psyche. But also sorry, I lost my train of thought, but also being told by doctors when I was 15 that I had a mental health diagnosis, and the prognosis was looking pretty slim back then. Basically, it was like, you had this thing, your brain works differently, and this is what you're going to deal with for the rest of your life. The only things that can really help are cognitive behavioral therapy, seeing a psychiatrist, and taking medication. So I took the medication, got worse off, and then experimented with a couple other meds until I finally got on Wellbutrin for about a year. And my experience being on Wellbutrin for a year at 16 and 17 was that I felt numb. And I remember being 17 and thinking like, something is off. Like, I don't think I'm supposed to feel this way. And if it's an antidepressant, why am I getting worse? Why am I feeling more numb to life? So I just stopped taking it. I don't know if I weaned off of it or took it cold turkey, but it aligned with the time that I was getting ready to go to college. So when I was 19, I mean, actually this probably explains it perfectly, because I went to college when I was 18 and did what college kids do. Thirsty Thursday, Margarita Monday, Taco Tuesday, Wine Wednesday, Friday, Saturday is the weekend, and then Sunday fun day. So we were pretty much drinking every single night, and it was normalized on college campus that I lived on. And it makes sense why I was also drawn to those activities, because I was not taking my medication anymore, although I was on birth control, which was prescribed to me by my doctor, which, by the way, made my emotions absolutely insane. I don't even have a normal baseline to refer it to, which is kind of upsetting, because I was medicated from the time I was 15 to 19 until I stopped taking it, because I realized something was off with the medication and I didn't feel like myself. And I think there's something really wrong with that. If you are a human being and you have signs of depression, anxiety, or your brain doesn't think normally in a way that can be controlled, or how do I say this, managed by authority figures or your peers, I think that there's something special about you, and there's something different about you, and there's something that is recognizing a problem with the system that you're in. For example, our school systems. For example, something that's going on in your family life. For example, watching the adults around you, the ones who are supposed to be the authority figures, watching how miserable and how awful their lives are and how awful they feel, and then thinking to yourself, I'm supposed to take advice from you guys and you guys are absolutely miserable. Like, what is this life? And when you're like 15, 16, 17, and even when you're younger, because kids are getting diagnosed with this at an even younger age now, and it's shaping our views of the world. So if you are already having those thoughts at a much younger age, it's like, I understand spiritually and emotionally why people feel like that. Because if you are an old soul, if you have psychic senses inherently, if you are a starseed or an empath or highly sensitive person, you might inherently recognize that some of these systems are not what your soul is used to, and they don't feel right, especially because children are so pure. They're the closest thing to source energy, which is why the occult members traffic children. So, okay, whole different conversation that could go really dark really quickly. But the reason children are targeted is because of their brain waves, the state of consciousness that they're in, and because they're so close to source energy. So when a child starts to feel depression and anxiety, that means something is wrong, and likely something is wrong in their environment, in the school systems, in whatever they're dealing with, any kind of trauma that they're dealing with in their own personal life, whether that is a divorced parent, a fighting parent, SRA or SA, or just any other kind of childhood trauma. And I worry about these kids these days because they're exposed to the internet and trauma that they can pick up just by viewing things on the internet. Not to mention the programming that we're watching and all the violence and the negativity, racism, classism, poverty, like just bad things that we're absorbing through our media. That is not something that a child connects with. Children are trained to see race. They're trained to see, differences in Democrats or Republicans. They're trained to think like their parents and do like their parents and do like the teachers tell them to. So we have to be trained to be a certain way. Why do you think different cultures grow up having different values? But if you put children together of all races and ages, they'll all be best friends. So let's just, side note. Anyways, I went off on a tangent there because I'm like, yeah, it's kind of messed up to think that your mind has been hijacked in a lot of cases. If you are neurodivergent and you were diagnosed at a young age, our minds have been hijacked from a very young age. Anyways, all of that leads me to my point that by the time I was 19, after I realized the effects of switching so many birth controls and realizing that no matter what birth control I took, I was batshit bonkers. And then kind of like settling on alcohol at that point in time, like deciding to myself as an 18-year-old, you know, I was young, but I knew enough back then that I was like, medication is not the answer. The fact that this thing that's supposed to cure depression and anxiety is making me feel worse and making me want to unalive myself even more. And the fact that birth control is like literally making my mood swings like so crazy, and it's making me fat and it's giving me cystic acne, like that didn't feel right either. So I quit all those things. I might have stayed on birth control and like tried a different one. I don't really remember, but I definitely quit it at some point in my early 20s because I couldn't handle the fake hormones and what it was doing to me. So I stopped doing that. And then I relied heavily on alcohol, and that was normalized for a very long time, especially since I worked in the restaurant industry. And I had a lot of bad things happen as a result of my choices with the substances I was consuming, like alcohol mainly, with the occasional recreational MJ. But I was a college dropout. Part of the reason I was a college dropout was that I was in a very prestigious design school, and I did an internship. I did a few internships, and I was like, I don't want to sit behind a computer in a cubicle all day designing ketchup labels. And these people are working like 70 hours a week, and they have like the best job. Like they're so prestigious at this prestigious design organization that like everybody wanted to work here because it was the cool place to work with all the young people. But I got there and I was like, this is miserable. Working like 70 to 90 hours a week, you have no life. You're married to the employers and your eyes are strained from sitting on a computer, and you like the company owns you. So the thought of doing that for like 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and like doing that until retirement was absolutely insane. So anyways, I continued on with my drinking and mainly drinking until I was about 27. And then I started to hit a wall at 27. I started to realize that I was hanging out with like 21-year-olds still, and younger people in their 20s. And all the people my age were starting to get married, starting to go back to college, having children, stuff like that. And I had none of that because I was in the cycle of binge drinking and partying on the weekends and like dating toxic men and you know, being a toxic woman because I didn't know any better. Like a lot of us, we don't know better because our brains are hijacked and we're mind controlled for a long time. And I was also trying to treat my neurodivergence with substances. So when I was 27, I had a desire to get sober. I stumbled upon a crystal shop in Asheville, North Carolina, found Amethyst. It was so pretty and sparkly. I wanted to make a necklace out of it. Started wearing this necklace, found out it has healing properties to help you quit drinking and to help with anxiety. Started wearing it every day. To my surprise, I started meditating consistently, and then I stopped drinking. It took me a couple months to like really stop. And eventually after a couple months into wearing this amethyst necklace and kind of realizing that it was too hard to stay stopped on my own, the universe also introduced me to some people who were in a 12-step program. And they had this glow about them. Like they were so happy and there was something very bright about them. So I started following them around to meetings, even though I couldn't admit to myself that I was an alcoholic because everyone around me was drinking the same amount. So I started following this guy around to meetings and then stayed because I related to the people and I related to what the big book said about addiction and how it affects the mind. So anyways, I hung around in 12-step recovery groups for close to 7 or so years, and I did Codependence Anonymous. I went to some NA meetings. I didn't have problems with like narcotics or anything like that, but I did go to those meetings just because it was all kind of like the same people going to different meetings. But I also tried SA, I tried Codependence Anonymous, I tried Al-Anon. So I tried all these 12-step programs. What I loved about it, I fell in love with it because I fell in love with the self-development aspect. And I didn't know that I had potential to heal so much of my trauma through doing these, I guess, essentially journaling exercises, or what we call it in the 12-step rooms is step work. So writing a 4th step, which is a personal inventory, making amends to the people that you harmed. When you do a 4-step inventory, you recognize the patterns and it's no longer about the other people you're resentful at, like the people who harmed you as a child, or like the friends that hurt you, the relationships that hurt you. It flips everything back on you. So you can no longer be the victim. Instead, you're looking at it objectively like, oh, that's odd. I thought all these people were using me, but it turns out they were using me, or I thought they were using me because I was really using them. If I'm being honest with myself and not lying to myself, which I have a tendency to do when I'm drinking, then I see the truth. And it was empowering and it was freeing. So that was my first step to kind of opening the gateway to exploring my psychic abilities. So once I was off it it might have been before 6 months, but I remember 6 months in, I got really interested in tarot cards. I met some people in the program who introduced me to tarot cards, and they told me, the girl who introduced me to them said, you're not supposed to read cards unless you are gifted a pack. And I just thought that was really cool. So I was like, I won't buy my own. And then I went shopping with a friend who wanted to buy his own pack of cards. So he bought the pack of cards, and then he decided when he got home that he didn't like them. And he's like, I don't like this deck. Do you want it? And I was like, yeah. So that was like the universe kind of like saying, hey, go read tarot. So I started learning tarot. Started also going to bookshops a lot and meditating a lot. I got really good at meditating. And back then I wasn't watching YouTube 12 hours a day. So I didn't have music to listen to, and my mom worked during the day. So I was able to meditate in complete silence and train myself to meditate in silence. And I got so good at it and loved it so much that I would like literally spend hours meditating. I would just like be in the Zen state. And I think doing all that meditation really helped me connect to deeper parts of my higher self and my intuition. And when we're exploring and building our intuition and discovering our intuitive abilities, like it can be like a spiral. Sometimes we go backwards to go forwards, and we learn little bits at a time and then come back to things that we thought we had already mastered, but we learn them in a deeper way. That's been my experience with my psychic abilities. But tarot cards were one thing that helped me discover them, because they kind of work like those one cards that they used in the gifted program. I forget what they're called, the Zennerman cards or something, where you kind of like guess what card is somebody's holding, or like, yeah, you use your imagination or your mind to guess. And tarot isn't really guesswork, but it's more like you're putting your intention into the cards. So if I'm asking a question about a relationship, the cards are reading my energy. So I might be in a situation with somebody where I broke up with them or something, or I feel like somebody's lying to me, and then I pull a 7 of Swords, which is about somebody being deceitful. So that kind of stuff would happen to me all the time when I was reading tarot cards, to the point where one day I was asking the same question like 5 or 6 times, and I literally shuffled every single time I drew cards that day. It was the 5 same cards after shuffling a deck of 72. So I started to realize like I'm the vessel for this. It's reading my energy. I don't have a clear answer, so the cards are not giving me a clear answer. So around the same time, I found an ESP book at Half Price Books. I think it was called Soul Consciousness and Psychic Power or something like that by Cora Deaver. And it has exercises in there for how to develop your ESP. And it talks about Kundalini rising and Kundalini awakenings. And that is huge, because when your Kundalini energy activates, it starts to come up through the energy body, and it will kind of stop in different areas of your body, different chakra systems where you're holding on to trauma. So for me in my childhood, I was holding on to a lot of early SA kind of experiences, like abusive situations that affected my sexuality and my relationship with intimate partners. So I was starting to have like, massive cramps or like bad periods and stuff like that. And then when it was coming up through the sacral energy center, which is your creative center, I got really like interested in dating a lot of people, and the universe kept putting new partners in my face. And I did a lot of karmic work with partners where they were teaching me things I needed to learn about myself. And every single time things went wrong, because it was a toxic relationship that brought up a lot of resentment and jealousy, I used them as a mirror, not use them as a mirror, but I was able to use those experiences as a mirror to look at myself. Like, why did I attract these people? What did I learn from the relationship? And then I was able to process some of that trauma. And then it moves up to the solar plexus, which is a lot of like IBS type issues and stomach issues and digestion issues. And that has to do with your identity and your boundaries, your personal boundaries, which I had none of because I wasn't taught how to have boundaries. And then when it moves up to the heart chakra, heartburn, acid reflux, lung stuff, like smoking issues, because you're learning how to give and receive love. And a lot of us aren't taught how to give and receive love in a balanced way. And then we move up to the throat chakra. If you've been, told to shut up most of your life because you think differently, you're neurodivergent, whatever it is, then you may have learned how to just be quiet. It's easier to be quiet than for people to constantly tell you that you're wrong, or tell you that you're stupid for thinking that way, or telling you like, no, this is how it is. So I shut up most of my life. I was a wallflower because I couldn't speak my truth because people didn't understand me. Again, like I said, grew up in the gifted program. I thought differently, and I also have a neurodivergent mind. So I always thought differently. And eventually I just stopped sharing myself with people and stopped talking because I just felt like I wouldn't be understood. So it was just easier for me to like slip back in the shadows, drink some alcohol at a party, act like I'm like mildly socializing, but all the while not feeling like a real person and not feeling like anyone got me. And then we move up to the final two energy centers and the Kundalini activation. And that is the third eye, which is when you start really experiencing things on the astral realm. So like night terrors and sleep paralysis or astral traveling, lucid dreaming. And then that's also kind of like the crown chakra. But the crown chakra for me was more like my intuition started really speaking to me. I saw visions during meditation. I would see angel numbers all the time. I would see spirit animals appear to me in real time. And then I'd look it up on Google and it would be exactly what I needed to know at the time. So all these weird experiences started happening to me. And I believe I was open to these experiences because A, I was no longer on psych meds. B, I was open to the experience of anything happening. C, I had stopped drinking and stopped at Mary Jane, so my vessel was clear. And D, I was really ready to work on myself. I was open to doing this, and I was meditating, which is a huge thing. So when you meditate, you learn how to quiet your mind. When your mind is quiet, you can start to hear the intuitive nudges. But the other big thing about psychic abilities, and I think why a lot of us, when we get treated with medication and we get slapped with a neurodivergent label, we oftentimes just use that as kind of like a Band-Aid. Like, well, I'm neurodivergent. It's just how it is. It's just how it is. I just have anxiety. I just have anxiety, rather than actually looking at what is causing that anxiety and what trauma we're holding on to make us a vibrational match to depression and anxiety. For me, in my case, a lot of my depression and anxiety came from the fact that I had a job that was soul sucking. I didn't like. I do not do well in a cubicle setting with a 9-to-5 job. I'm a very creative person. I need to be on my feet. I've got I've got ADHD, so I also need to be doing something creative. I have hyper focus, which is actually a gift, to be able to hyper focus on something. Like, how do you think this studio was created? Like, hyper focus. That's not even all of my studio. That's only some of it. But anyways, like, only neurodivergent people have the time and energy to like create entire fantasy worlds in the the 3D reality. So that's why I think neurodivergence is really a gift. And if you've got something like autism or Asperger's or anything like that, OCD, that's the gift of recognizing patterns. So anyways, back to my point about depression and anxiety just being a symptom of something bigger going on. I was so used to, in most of my 20s, just saying, well, I have anxiety, I'm depressed, I have ADHD, and using that as like a blanket term for me to avoid looking at myself internally to really figure out what was wrong. And once I looked at what was wrong, I was able to realize that my emotions, my depression, my anxiety was caused from my emotions trying to tell me that something wasn't right. And once I cleared up all this psychic gunk, I started having all these psychic experiences. I started lucid dreaming. My night terrors went away. My nightmares went away. My sleep, paralysis experiences went away when I stopped drinking and when I started processing trauma. Because a lot of times there's so many people, especially those who are neurodivergent or drinking still, like they can't sleep. They need medication to sleep. And a lot of them are afraid to sleep because they only have the negative experiences with the astral realm. And I would bet my career on this, that if you have negative sleep and nightmares, it's because there's some kind of belief deep within you that is making you a vibrational match to that. And that's not me victim shaming. That is me trying to empower you. So like, I know this from experience because until I was able to look at my trauma, like those things that I didn't want to face, like how my parents' divorce affected me, how an experience when I was 3 years old, like sounds crazy, like something affected me like really bad. Plus all the unresolved trauma from GATE. We don't even know what happened to us. The fact that we have like such a gap in memory, like God knows what happened from that program. But there was so much trauma in other areas of my life, things that I didn't even want to call trauma because it was like, well, they're doing the best they could, or this was like normalized trauma. And that's what's happening to so many people. Normalized trauma, ritualistic trauma. No joke that car just came by right now, but like there's ritualized trauma and abuse in this country through MK Ultra mind control, through programming, through substance abuse. And I'm even going to include some kind of medication might even be considered substance abuse when you are looking at it from the lens of, a certain article, for example, like the Illuminati formula to control or for a complete and undetectable mind control slave, for example, because they talk about substances and then how easy we are to, hypnotize under that influence or persuade under the influence of substances. So when there's things that are messing with the chemicals in our brain that are numbing us out, we're in a hypnotic state. So people can make suggestions and they don't even have to. This is how messed up this system is that we're keeping ourselves in a prison. We're keeping ourselves in the matrix by repeating these lines from the TV programs that we watch and calling it normal. And that's simply out of, I mean, I know how difficult it is. I was going to say laziness, but like if I look at myself, like I was lazy. I didn't want to sit and journal. I didn't want to learn how to meditate. It was hard. I didn't want to give up my favorite food and drink. I didn't want to change my group of friends. I didn't want to go sit in a meeting every day. Like I didn't want to do any of that. And it was the best decision I ever made in my life. And I'm so glad I did. Like it is a gift from God, from the universe, that I ever had substance abuse issues in the first place, because they woke me up. And if you are, lucky enough to have neurodivergence, whether you're on medication or you're off medication, or you can relate to anything that I said, the main point I want to make in this video is that basically, I think this war over consciousness right now is it's like a war over this idea that we're sovereign beings. Like there's so much happening on the spiritual plane and the astral level and MK Ultra mind control programming, etc., music, etc., that a lot of us are being told who we are. It's like they're putting us on this little algorithm. Like if you've got mental illness, my therapist told me if you have ADHD, you're most likely to die by the time you're 40. Like that was terrifying to me. Like, geez. And you know what? If you have alcoholism, you're also on that path too. And they actually have a show about that called Westworld, where they have this giant supercomputer, and people who were on the mental illness path often passed away when they were younger. So if you have mental illness, just know that that doesn't have to be your story. You actually have a gift and you have potential to have and develop your psychic abilities. But that potential is not going to actualize if we continue to tell ourselves that there's something wrong with us, that this is untreatable, that the only solution is a pill, that we're different, but that different is a bad thing. In all actuality, everything I've learned, our differences are what make us brilliant and what make us geniuses. And what I intended to talk about in this video was how the different types of neurodivergence are different types of superpower. So like ADHD, for example, you're a multidimensional creator. You get a lot of ideas and you can tap into different timelines at once. If you're bipolar or borderline, you're often a mirror for other people. You're a super sensitive person. So you're literally reflecting the emotional states of other people and environments, and you're taking it on. So if you're bipolar or borderline, what you really need to learn is proper boundaries and energetic shielding. So I also struggled with that when I was younger, and until I learned how to psychically shield myself and to stop treating my mental illness with alcohol and substances, then I was finally able to develop boundaries and recognize that all the stuff that I thought was me was really actually coming from other people that I over-identified with, and I took on a lot of pain from other people. But once I started recognizing mine from theirs, it was like, wow, my whole life has changed. And then when you look at things like depression and anxiety, it's like weird to me that the questionnaire for depression is like, have you been sad for more than 2 weeks? And it's like, okay. And I understand the chemical imbalance part, but we have a chemical imbalance because of what they're putting in our food, water, air, etc., and our diets. Like your mental health is related to your gut. So if you're eating and drinking garbage, which I was, like drinking alcohol is taxing on your liver, even doing MJ, like to think that that's not destroying your lungs and filling your body with toxins, and the fact that it's filled with pesticides when they're treating it, if you're buying dispensary products, your body's having to work harder to detox from those chemicals, not to mention how it's affecting your brain waves and your brain patterns. Yet people will sit and argue with you till you're blue in the face and say, I need it for my anxiety. I can't sleep without it. Okay, well that's, I know that feeling because I was there once too. But if I was being 100% honest with myself, like if I want to expand as a person and I want to live up to my full potential, I can't keep using that as an excuse, and I have to at least try. Like I don't think that our creator made us the way that we are to have to be medicated or alter our minds every day. I think this is a human perception. I think it can be fun to experiment with plant medicine, but once it becomes something that you have to do every day just to exist and just to feel like yourself, I think there's a problem with that. And I think, again, when people argue about it, like how it's good for them and it helps them, to each their own, that's great. But if you're looking at it from the perspective of like this elite group of people trying to control the population, and all this government programs they have going on, all the secret ops, alien disclosure agendas, all of that, like it's so easy to see that we're literally being dumbed down with substances for a reason. And the ones with the neurodivergence, these are the people that get it. These are the people who have symptoms of neurodivergence because they recognize that something isn't right. So it's really scared me to think that we've been being medicated and kind of like hushed down to kind of prevent us from tapping into our abilities. So not only are we being like kind of hushed down with certain medications we could be on, but then we're also being shown like, everybody should drink alcohol, you should have mimosas with breakfast, and you should have happy hour at night, and then like take MJ for your anxiety, it will help you sleep because it's normal to not be able to sleep, right? Yeah, because everybody can't sleep. But that's because we're pumping the air with frequencies, and that's because we're putting disturbing stuff on the news and the media, and then we're making your mind overactive because we're forcing you to work 3 jobs to pay your rent, and now everything is like 4 times more expensive. So not only do you have to work more to make more money, now you probably have kids, or you've got dogs, or you've got family, and you've got other people to worry about, and now you're trying to date people because you're just trying to escape from this life, and the only solace you can find is in a romantic partner, but these are all toxic partners, so now they're adding to your problems instead of relieving them like you hoped they would. I don't know. That was my experience. And until I started to just really recognize what was going on and like getting into some of this conspiracy stuff, and until I kind of like naturally was like, maybe I should take a step back from this stuff, then I started to get a clear head again. Then I learned how to develop my psychic skills, like remote viewing, ESP, trusting my intuition, my discernment, etc. So I need to make a big disclaimer that I should have made 30 minutes ago. Like, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. This is simply my own experience, my own observations. And it is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea to just quit any medication that you're on like cold turkey, especially if you've been on it for a while. It's so important to taper down. When I just quit my Adderall medicine cold turkey, I had horrible psychic attacks like every couple of weeks. Like it was really bad. And then I couldn't sleep at all for 2 weeks. But the payoff for me was that eventually, like I knew it was a result of the medication because I found stuff online. It was like, well, these are the symptoms you might have from coming off of methamphetamines. And I highly recommend like detox and rehab programs because they'll give you stuff to help you get through that transitional period. I did it on my own. So it's not impossible to do it on your own, but I came from a very elevated state of consciousness where I knew what was happening. I knew the symptoms to expect, and I was able, thank God, to just say, okay, this is just your body. You're separate from this. And also because I was meditating. So my meditation gave me a different awareness than I would have had otherwise. So yeah, I'm not saying that anybody should just stop taking their medicine. I don't mean to shame anyone. I'm just trying to kind of plant some ideas and seeds in you that if you are a person who is neurodivergent and it's not serving you to call yourself that, and it is not giving you a good life, like maybe you're not neurodivergent, you take medicine, your life is great, like, and you love your job and you love your friends and you love your relationships. So I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the people who are doing all the right things that they should be doing, and the people whose lives are not getting better even though they're doing all the right things. That's the category I fell into. So that's who I'm talking to. So like, again, one size does not always fit all, and each of us is going to have their own unique experience, but I'm just trying to be the voice for the voiceless, those who don't know that there's something better. I figured this out on my own. There was nobody to guide me and say, hey, maybe you should like not take this. Maybe this is actually making it worse. Maybe you should stop drinking. Maybe you should, your nightmares, maybe they're actually a sign of psychic gifts, but you just don't know how to use them because you live in a world where 3D reality is everything, and nobody talks about the astral realm. They don't talk about astral experiences. They don't talk about meditation. They don't talk about crystals. They don't talk about any of this stuff. But again, I learned it all on my own, and I learned it all from reading books and from observing other people who had what I wanted and who had a lifestyle, like they had the energy that I wanted. And then I noticed their habits, like, oh, they're sober, or like, oh, they eat mostly plants and fruit. Oh, they exercise every day. Oh, they are celibate. Like, I'm going to try these things because these people look happy and I want that energy. So that's what I aspire to be for other people, is like trudging this trail that like wasn't there before. And now it's here because other people made the trail for me. I made this trail hopefully for other people. And again, I'm not a doctor. I don't recommend quitting anything without the use of a doctor. And I don't recommend like quitting substances without a support system, because that support system is going to be your lifeline. So whether that is an internet group, whether that is a 12-step program, whether that is some kind of rehab center, if you're trying to quit substances, then or a doctor, a therapist, all of these things. I also don't recommend only relying on one romantic partner. I think that's also a terrible idea, and it can put you in some dangerous situations. So I think we need a group, and a lot of the times codependency goes along as a co-addiction with your substance of choice. So I think that it can be dangerous to rely on romantic partners. So I think the goal is and should be find groups of people, find at least 3 other people who are doing what you're doing. And if you don't have somebody like that, start that. Like, put yourself out there on Facebook, say, hey, I'm thinking about going without alcohol for a month. Does anybody want to join me and have an accountability group? Hey, I'm deciding to quit MJ and find a better alternative for sleep. Hey, I'm looking to try to develop my ESP. I want to read this book this month. Does anybody else want to read a book with me and start a book group? Like, you can be proactive in your own life. You can put yourself out there, and then the tribe will come. So I hope this has been helpful, and sorry if I got off topic again. And the last thing I do want to talk about is all of this to say that this is one of the big reasons why I'm starting this remote viewing group. I'm calling it a remote viewing program, but it's also about ESP development, and it's also about clearing our vessel. And the reason why I want to do it during the new moon in Virgo is because it will be aligned and blessed with the power of the new moon, which is a great time to set intentions. And Virgo is all about clearing the body and focusing on our daily habits. And when that energy peaks on the full moon, the moon and sun are in opposition. So it's going to be Virgo Pisces. Pisces is when we have the out of body experiences. It's when we astral project and astral travel and develop our ESP. It's when we write amazing music. And I believe that full moons also bring us epiphanies. So when we're with the power of five or six people, which will be in my small group for the remote viewing program, we will have combined intentional energy of the people in the group. We will have support in this group, and we will be able to maybe have some cool experiences together on the eclipse, which is September 7th, which eclipse will be full moon in Pisces. And anyways, the program's starting on August 23rd or 24th at the time of the full moon. It's $444. It's an investment because this is going to be a very intimate group of people. I'm pre-screening everyone to make sure it's the right fit. I've already had a few applicants, and there's only 5 spots. So I'm going to wait like a week or so, go through all the applicants, make sure we have compatible energies for the group, because I'll probably do more than one round. But for this first round, I want, the people to get along, or like I want to have a good match of energy in there and make sure we all have kind of like a similar level of experiences, because that will determine my curriculum and how I teach this. But since it's Virgo season, in a few weeks, it's so important to learn how to clear our vessels. I want to share daily tips and habits where you can help clear your mind, which will supercharge your psychic abilities and your ability to remote view and tap into your ESP. You'll also have access. We're going to meet 4 times a month as a group for an hour, and then we do a 30-minute Q&A session after that. We're going to have a private Discord or Facebook group for the 6 of us, including me. We will do remote viewing exercises and psychic exercises together. We will learn, you'll also have weekly exercises that you can do in addition to our group meetings if you want to. And you'll have access to me all month. I have like 40,000 something people that watch my channel that interact with me and often slide in my DMs. So I do not have time to respond to every single person that messages me, but I do make my paid clients a priority. So those are the people that, if you're paying for my services, you're absolutely going to get access to me and hopefully learn a lot and connect with me in a deeper way. As much as I'd love to connect with everyone, there's just simply not enough time in the day, and there's simply not enough people. And if I don't take naps and breaks from my phone, I'm not going to be able to show up for you guys. So my goals right now in life are to like show up on YouTube for the community, put this knowledge and this information and these tools out there for people, and then show up for my paid clients and people who have decided to go deeper in the one-on-one experiences with me. So yeah, and then you will also get a free human design reading, which is a $222 value or a $333 value for my full deep dive human design readings that are like 3+ hours long. But I usually break it up into sessions. So I do like $111 entry reading, then the $222 tier for like the intro plus a little more information. And then for those who are ready to just like balls deep dive in, like $333. So anyways, if you're doing this program, you're going to get a free human design reading as part of this experience. And then by the end of the month, hopefully you'll be a professional remote viewer and you'll be able to do whatever you want with this ability, whether that is teaching others or using it just in your own life. Like I've been able to find my friends missing car keys by tapping into my remote viewing abilities. I can pick up on what somebody's doing in real time. I can pick up on somebody's feelings and thoughts. So it's a really cool gift and ability to have, and it protects you in this world where we can't always trust what we're seeing and what people are saying. But if you learn how to develop your skill of intuition and discernment and skills like remote viewing, like you are good to go. And you have to learn energetic boundaries and how to keep your vessel clean. So that's what I'm doing, and that's why the value, that's why it's $444. Now, if you do not have $444 and you're not ready to do the full month commitment this round, there will most likely be other rounds. I don't know if I'll jump right into it after that because I might need a break to kind of like decompress after that. But I also do one-on-one sessions, and I highly recommend human design readings and one-on-one readings for astrology transits, human design, or a personal remote viewing tarot session, because that is also a way to work with me and kind of like a little taste of like what that group would be like. And that's the bread and butter of what I do, just working with people one-on-one and helping them. Human design can be a great way to help you tap into your own intuitive abilities also, because it's looking at your auric field and where you're open to receiving energy and where you project energy. So that also helps me develop my psychic abilities a lot, which is why we're starting with human design as part of the remote viewing program. So if you're interested in the remote viewing program, I do have an application in my description for you to fill out, and we do a little bit of a screening process just to make sure the fit is right and the energy is right for everyone involved, because it is such a good, such an investment, right? So I wanna make sure we're all getting what we intend to get out of it. So if you're interested in applying for the program or being on the waiting list, go ahead and fill out the description or the application in my description. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, I am still taking a limited number of clients right now for astrology or human design readings. And I have a price list in my free Gate Kids guide. And it's the free guide for Gate Kids, Empaths, and Neurodivergent souls. So you can also find that in my description. If you put your email in there, I'll send you the form, and then you'll also see my prices. You can also find my prices and my offerings on my Instagram page, Statements by Alex. I'm also on TikTok, but I don't have my offerings listed there. But Instagram is where I usually book clients and talk to people. And I'm on TikTok from time to time. And if you don't have any of those social sites, then get at me through the free Gate Kids guide. And I would love to work with more people one-on-one and help you find freedom. And that's about it for today. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you guys in the remote viewing program or one-on-one, because it's such a fun time to discover this stuff about yourself. So thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video.